security cameras are destroying fiction, it's no longer possible to write any interesting fiction. What if a person wants to write various mysteries in a variety of unique settings? What if you want to write about a character that gets angry a lot and does nasty, sleight-of-hand things in public while no one is looking at him? He damages property, or maybe he even kills people. Or this character wants to live off the grid, so the government doesn't know he exists. And in the meantime, he gets into all these adventures, and he has climactic battles with his adversaries in places where no one is looking. So maybe at night time he has climactic battles while everyone is sleeping. Maybe he shoots some adversary dead, or whatever, and leaves without reporting the body to the cops. So the cops have to investigate the homicide and be unable to solve it. You know how fiction works. Such things as unsolvable homicides are the staple of fiction. There is usually a mystery. Someone did something bad. Think about that TV show Dexter. Dexter has to do everything out of sight, and so do his adversaries, so the law enforcement isn't involved. Well, trouble is that because of cameras, it's become impossible to write such stories. It's very hard to do anything in most public places now where it won't be seen later. Let's say I want to write about a character traveling late at night alone on a train, and he gets into some kind of altercation there, and an adversary ends up dead. Or I want to write that they fought alone on a train platform, and the adversary ended up getting thrown in front of a passing train. Or they fought inside an office building while no one was there. In the novel Hosts, Repairman Jack ends up killing a mass shooter inside a subway car, and then he has to run away once the train gets to the station. In such fictional scenarios, the police are not supposed to find out what happened. Even if Jack is a good guy who did a good thing, he can't get involved with police. The plot may require that the public is not supposed to learn what happened. Let's take this example. If you look at a surveillance video of like a package thief, you can see that this video captures a part of the neighbor's house, their front entrance. So what if someone like James Grider lives in that house, and he needs to sneak out of his house for some reason, and there can't be evidence that he did so, except his neighbor has a hidden security camera that records it. What if I want to write a mystery that takes place on a cruise ship, for instance, where James Grider sneaks around and causes damage, where he sneaks below the waterline on a cruise ship and punches a hole in the hull with the wick dick of Hecris. Let's say if a crew member catches him, he kills the crew member with the wick dick of Hecris to silence him. Well, no cruise ship is going to sink from a gaping hole that's only 1 foot wide. But maybe he wants to do it just for fun, just to cause a little trouble. So he has to sneak around the ship, do something bad, then sneak back up, and no one will know it was him because no one saw him. But if there are cameras all over the cruise ship, that's not good. Maybe in the plot of my book I want James Grider to do something nasty inside a shopping mall, or a parking lot, where the plot requires he is never caught by the police afterward. It's now impossible to write good fiction because of surveillance cameras. If The Relic wasn't written in 1995, but was written instead in 2015. They might have known what was killing those security guards in the museum because of surveillance cameras. In consequence, the superstition exhibition would have never occurred, and the mass panic at the end, where tons of people died, wouldn't have happened, making the story rather boring. Why can't I write that James Grider murders some adversary in the back lot of this particular business here, for instance, while no one is there late at night? I can't because they have cameras there covering certain areas. You can no longer write a story where some kind of important scientific project is happening in a techno-thriller, and there is a saboteur working on the project, and the team is forced to solve the mystery of who might be sabotaging the project, because surveillance cameras would easily solve the mystery. I don't know why Special Agent Pendergast doesn't install surveillance cameras at 891 Riverside Drive, thus leaving himself vulnerable to attacks. I mean, a stranger knocks on his door and he doesn't know who it is until he opens the door. Even after the body of his dead son was tossed on his front step, he still didn't install surveillance cameras. In a TV show like Bates Motel, why didn't Norma Bates install surveillance cameras? There are so many mysteries that might have been solved, completely affecting the course of the story and making it less fun. Many creepy people showed up at the motel. Bad people would break into her house, but still no cameras were installed. I guess I can understand why she wouldn't. But anyway, it's impossible to write any good fiction. It's impossible to set a story where a serial killer is murdering people in any big city by breaking into apartments. It's impossible to have anything take place in secret during some large public event like a parade because of security and cell phone cameras. Basically, any typical storyline that you could have easily written in the 1980s or the 1990s or even the early 2000s is now impossible to write. A TV show like Breaking Bad won't ever be seen again. It's impossible to write it because cameras have now changed the world. You see here, he sets a guy's car on fire at a gas station. He could have been caught on surveillance cameras, and that could have collapsed his meth-making project, basically killing the show. A TV show like Dexter can't be made anymore. They are going to put license plate reading cameras all over New Orleans. So if you are setting any kind of mystery story with murders there, it won't work. Your character won't be able to kill anyone, even within the privacy of their own home, because a neighbor's surveillance camera might capture them carrying the body out. You see, the ability to write good fiction is dead. There is really no more fictional stories set in the contemporary world that you can write that will be believable. You can't even write about two kids fighting without a third kid filming it and letting the whole world know, which might cause the two kids who were fighting to get arrested. Let's say you wanted to write about this guy's cats getting poisoned by some mystery adversary. You can't, because he has surveillance cameras to watch the cats. Like, you can't write about some kid climbing into his yard and grabbing one of the cats and running off with it to murder it, because he is practicing to be a serial killer, because these cameras will expose him. I think you get the picture now. Now, this brings up a very important conspiracy that I will now expose. You know how all these mainstream news stations support the Democrat Party, a party that has been pushing the world toward an Orwellian existence, where Everyone is under surveillance. These news outlets own TV stations that broadcast a lot of television series, many of which are police procedurals, like CSI. Dexter was on Showtime, and Showtime is owned by CBS, I believe. What has been going on for a long time is that these networks have been pushing out fictional television series where plot lines ignore the existence of surveillance cameras, and they have been doing that for some while now. In Orange is the New Black, surveillance cameras are ignored in the prison for the sake of creating drama and mystery. The phenomenon that is quietly taking place now is that they simply don't write the cameras into the stories so as not to derail the plot. And what ended up happening is that no one else other than myself has caught on to this. Why aren't surveillance cameras being used in fictional shows to trip up the entire plot and basically derail the whole storyline? Well, I just told you, those news networks that produce these shows, they are heavily Democrat-leaning. Part of refusing to add surveillance cameras into their storylines is to leave the public believing that surveillance isn't as widespread as it is. They basically show television series where storylines are written as if we're still in the 90s, with an occasional smartphone depicted that characters have conversations on. But otherwise, murders happen in these TV shows, home invasions and break-ins happen in these TV shows, adversaries engage in fights out in the open, and surveillance and cell phone cameras that should be capturing these events are never brought up. It's as if they don't exist in those fictional worlds. No one who watches these shows or reads these books seems to notice, and that is exactly how the masters in the media who support the Big Brother party want it to be. They like to ignore the elephant in the room, because in turn it will cause you, the zombies who watch this shit, to ignore it as well, and thus you will have or retain the impression that your privacy is still the same as it was in the 1990s. If you think I am full of shit, let's take a look at another elephag in the room they've been proven to ignore, which is black criminality and black racism against whites and Asians. Whenever these media companies publish some incident of black violence, 90% of the time they will not mention the race of the perpetrators if they happen to be black. They want the masses to believe that black criminality pattern doesn't exist, and that instead it is white criminality against blacks that is rampant. When black mobs ransack a store, they don't say that it's a black mob. They say that it's teens or kids who did it, or youth. It was a youth gang that did it. The fact that they're all always black is not a pattern. It's just a huge coincidence. The greatest coincidence in the history of the world, that these teens and kids all happen to be black. And there is curiously never any video of white kids or teens doing this. And guess what? It works. People ignore black criminality and instead nurture their guilt that somehow it is white people that are victimizing black people. Well, it's the same way if they show you TV shows where surveillance cameras don't come into play. You will live feeling as if we don't have rampant surveillance. Problem is, this elephag in the room is growing at a very rapid pace. When every house and street in America has a surveillance camera, I want to know, how are these TV show writers going to continue ignoring that? No longer will there mystery scenarios work. There won't be any mystery. If Dexter murders someone, he'll be caught on his first murder, and there won't be a Dexter TV show. There cannot be a Sopranos TV show anymore. So, what are they going to do? Are they going to do what Stranger Things creators did and set the story in the 1980s? Are we going to end up watching people being more happy and free to be themselves without surveillance by seeing TV shows that are set in the past, before this scourge came to be? What will there be left to write other than a storyline of rebellion against the system? Is the plot of every book, movie, and TV show going to be like 1984, because there is really nothing else left to write? And how long will you be allowed to write something like that and bash the system until you are forbidden to bash the system? I can't even set a murder mystery inside a university because of cameras. I can't set it anywhere, really, unless it's in the fucking woods or something. This is killing fiction. Contemporary fiction will be dead in a few years, if it's not dead already. Cameras already killed off CSI. They're not gonna tell you that security cameras is why CSI was killed off. A lot of these police procedural shows are going to die out in the coming years, because there will be no more mysteries left to write. I mean, where can a killer murder someone other than inside their home or in the woods where he won't be caught on cameras? I don't watch those stupid shows and I don't care, but what we might begin seeing is detective series. Detective series that will begin to appear that are set in the 1980s, in the 1990s. And of course, this phenomenon will happen without any explanation as to why, and the idiots are just going to swallow it, and no one will ask why. This ability to create interesting mystery stories in the contemporary world is swiftly shrinking. I would dare say it's already gone. As old people who are used to living without security cameras inside their homes die out, and younger Democrats grow up and buy their own houses, they're gonna install these things, just like lights. The camera is a ubiquitous piece of equipment, like a light bulb. You buy a home and you install one in each room without questioning it, because it's something you do, like installing a towel rack in your bathroom, or the lock on your door. I can't even write about James Grider doing something bad on a bus because there are cameras on buses. Everyone is so confident in themselves and their own level-headedness that they think this system will never be used against them. People that are completely fucking brainwashed. The media companies will continue putting out movies and TV shows where they pretend the stuff isn't there, and the morons will keep watching and not questioning it, and thus it will reinforce the impression that everything is just as free and open and anonymous as it was in the 1980s, when it isn't anymore. I think television writers should approach their superiors and say that none of the plots in this detective mystery are working because of surveillance cameras. This will result in many TV shows being hit with cancellation and the networks losing millions. It would be funny to see what would happen.